So that was 20 years ago. You've now had, this is nice, 2001, 2020. You've had this lovely 20-year anniversary of your career as a novelist. What, I mean, this is a huge question. You can take this any direction you want. What's different in, the world or the publishing world or the, Jen writing books world? What in 20 years, what's different?
Okay, well, in 20 years, I mean, when I wrote Good in Bed, I was a single lady who had recently had her heart broken. I had no children. I had, no obligation. Oh, look, they're dropping the link for Richard Russo's book in the chat.
See?
Okay, so, my life was very different, and it was very easy for me to find time to kind of fit it in with my day job as a reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Whereas now it's like it's sort of come full circle, because there were years when my kids were little and they needed me all the time. And I had a nanny and I had a housekeeper and like my whole village, lots of relatives. My mom would come help. And now my kids are teenagers and want nothing to do with me, and my life is once again my own. So I would say that's a big change. The internet is obviously a huge change, because so Good in Bed, some of you may have read it, some of you maybe have not. It's about a woman whose boyfriend dumps her and then writes an article in a magazine called Loving a Larger Woman that's all about how brave he was to sort of be with her, and isn't he wonderful, and wasn't she silly to be so insecure, and blah, blah, blah. And the book opens where Canny Shapiro, the heroine, is at her desk at the newspaper. Her best friend calls her on a landline, says, go to the newsstand, pick up a physical copy of this magazine and turn to page whatever. And I'm thinking, if that were to happen now, her friend would text her and say, just like, here's this link I just saw on BuzzFeed, OMG, emoji. The internet has changed so much. It's changed the way we communicate. It's changed the things we communicate about. It's changed what it's like to stalk an ex-boyfriend. Like, I tell my kids, like, my life was so hard. Like, if you wanted to stalk your ex, you had to do that in person. Like, you had to get in a car and physically drive by his house. You couldn't Google him. There was no Google.
You had to cut out the letters from the magazines and tape them to the letter and send it in the mail.
Right. You had to like call his like outgoing the outgoing message on his answering machine, which had a tape in a box, and listen to it to hear if he had changed it, to see if you could figure out if something was going on. I mean, and publishing was very different too. The whole process of like finding an agent, finding a publisher, like I wrote my first novel on a Mac Classic that did not even have a modem, because what even was that? And, I printed it out at Kinko's, and then I bought a book, and then again, a physical actual book, or maybe I took it out of the library. No, I'm pretty sure I bought it. It was called A Writer's Guide to Literary Agents. And I just made a list that I cross-referenced with like all of my favorite novels. And I would look in the dedication or the acknowledgement to see who the agent was. So like I made a list, and then I like sent my query letters off to these people with no idea, like, if they were still working, if they'd retired in the time since the book had been published, if they died since the book had been published. Like, you just had to like hope for the best, because there was no way to check, because there was no Google. It was a different